Let us understand how to bind a Jdbc interpreter with a Zeppelin. Jdbc interpreter will facilitate to make a Jdbc connection to any data source, and once the connection is established, we should be in a position to do insert, update, select, all such operations against the data source. It is very well tested with the following data sources: Postgre, MySQL, Maria, Redshift, Hive, Phoenix, Drill, and Tejo. While configuring the Jdbc interpreter, we need to provide the following information: where the RDBMS is running, that is the host name and port, user ID, password to connect to the database, and the driver specific to the RDBMS we are going to connect with. Once we have these informations, we should be in a position to connect to the database, and the Jdbc interpreter, it provides n number of settings. I can do the configuration specific to the RDBMS with which we are going to do the connection. Let us see how to create an interpreter. I have the Zeppelin notebook up and running. Let me get into the interpreter settings page. Here I am going to create a new interpreter. I can give a name to the interpreter. Let me call it as MySQL. The interpreter group, I am going to make it as Jdbc, and it provides the default configurations in terms of what is the maximum number of results it should get, and the driver, it has to use the user ID, password, all those informations. Once if I configure, I should be in a position to connect to the data source or the database. I'm going to configure MySQL database. To configure MySQL database, I have the MySQL database running within my system, and I have a database imported. I have a sample database, Sakila, imported from this specific location. And it has the instruction on how to create the database and how to import the data. I'm going to configure the MySQL database using this Jdbc interpreter. I need to provide the driver details. What is the driver with which I am going to connect, where the database is running, that is the IP address and the port at which it is running, the user ID and the password. I need to provide the Marvin artifact from which it is going to get the driver. Let me go ahead and configure. I'm going to make the number of rows available as 10,000, and I'm going to set the driver com.mysql.jdbc.driver. Let me set the username and the URL where it is going to connect with. I need to make sure the IP address, I need to make sure the IP address of my machine, it's 192.168.0.101, and MySQL is running in the default port 3306, and I'll provide the password. In case if I want to provide any other configuration, I can add more properties, and the driver will be coming from this particular Marvin artifact. Let me add the Marvin artifact. With all these informations, I'm going to say save and create this particular interpreter. So I have an interpreter, and I can create a notebook using this specific interpreter. I can create a notebook. Let me name it as MySQL note 1, MySQL demo underscore note 1, and the default interpreter I want it to be running over here should be MySQL. Say create. I can check whether the database is working. Let me issue a sample command. Yes, it's able to list the databases available within my MySQL database, and we are able to successfully create an interpreter of type Jdbc, and we are able to make a connection to the MySQL database.